All right, welcome everybody. This is a diehard audience here, staying at 4:45, near the end of the conference. But I'm excited to show you some really cool stuff with Visual Studio 2026. I've been having so much fun with this. When I was given the opportunity to do this presentation, I immediately was like, yes, please, because I'm just really, really loving VS 2026. Before I dive in, how many people here are actually running it locally on your machine? Awesome. And how many people are waiting to be convinced? Okay, cool. So we got some of each. Awesome. So for the people that are already on board, I'm going to show you some fun tricks. And for the other folks, I hope to convince you. Let's dive in. So it is out, Visual Studio 2026. We made the jump from 2022 to 2026. So it is a, we're going to go over kind of three main areas. We're going to talk about the blazing fast modern IDE. We're going to talk about specific kind of deep dive on profiling, because that is a really cool feature on Visual Studio 2026. And then finally, we'll talk about kind of the enterprise-ready features. So first of all, it is great for modern workloads. So we just shipped .NET 10 last week. Hope all your pictures turn out. There's some kind of small print there, but the big points are in larger fonts. So we just shipped .NET 10 last week at .NET Conf. Got all kinds of great new stuff, and so that is built right in, ships along with it. Aspire, of course. Aspire, I'm absolutely loving Aspire for local development. Really ties things together, makes it easy to kind of stitch multiple dependencies together to observe what's going on in my applications. C# 14, intelligent apps. So that is a key feature of a lot of the applications we're building nowadays, is integrating intelligence into our applications, and that is built right into VS 2026. Git and CI/CD, of course, that's the tooling there to analyze your CI/CD workflows, to run those locally inside the IDE. So a few other things kind of lower down on this. Modernizing your workloads. We know that's really important to you. I did another session on that on Tuesday. That was Breakout 150. And so that is one where I spent the entire time, diving into that. Gaurav and I did. But that is a key feature that in the past you may have had to go out and get an extension that got you part of the way there. And modernizing your applications is just built into 2026. I'm going to get tired of saying 2026, but I'll keep trucking on. Gaming. So gaming is an important feature, especially with C++ workloads. And so that is an important thing. I've got some cool demos and slides on that later on. And modern C++ also, modernizing your build, modernizing your code, et cetera. And so you'll notice some themes on this that are on this slide, right? .NET and C++. And those are really what I consider the sweet spot for Visual Studio 2026. So as you think about your different editor and IDE options out there, sometimes I dive into VS Code. I love it. It's a great editor, and it's awesome for things like, Markdown, JavaScript. Even with the C# dev kit, I can get by on C# development. But for real power development, for really using the powerful features as an IDE, 2026 is the premier development experience. It really deeply understands your solution. It has powerful features for profiling, for digging into your application in ways that no just editor is going to be able to do. Same with C++. There's just some really, we've been building Visual Studio for over 25 years now, and it just has, it is a really big, solid enterprise solution. So that's kind of the key features there. So some themes in 2026 in our development is it really is focused on you as a developer. So what we did in building it is we really looked at feedback. We really dove deep into a lot of things that have been reported in the developer community, and just hacked away on fixing those higher ranked issues. And we really got some great response from the previews. So This is something where I personally am enjoying using 2026. It's fast, it's snappy, it works well, it's smooth, et cetera. But we also are seeing just unanimous, great feedback across. So there's, these are quotes from our MVPs, but there have been some great, I encourage you, search around, read articles, Visual Studio Magazine, et cetera. And it really has been just incredible feedback across the board on this. Things people are saying, it's fast. It is, it looks good. It's nice to work in all day. It's just a great overall experience. Also a smooth upgrade experience. Works side by side with 2022, so you don't have to worry about making a big switch. So it's really been designed around all those things to make you happy as a developer. Some of those things come down to just small details. So for instance, a thing that bugged us was that in 2022, the line number margin was always set for 4 characters. So I guess we expected, you to have 9,999 lines in your code, and we're designing around that. But why not, if you're actually factoring your code into slightly smaller files, maybe we could slim that down, right? Is it just a few pixels? Yes, but you're in that IDE all day, every day as a developer, right? You're spending hours and hours and hours of your life in there, and you want it to look good and feel good, and we don't want to waste your space, right? So this is a small detail, but it's an example of the sort of attention to detail that we focused on in this release. That also comes down to things like personalization. So a common thing that I always liked in VS Code is being able to just theme it up, right? And so we ship with some really cool themes right out of the box in VS 2022, or 2026. Some of these in the past, I would install theme packs, right? You could go out to the marketplace and you could find some cool theme packs. You could search around and get stuff. It's great to be able to just install 2026 and pick from the list, right? So that's an example too. Settings. Settings in the past, I've spent so many hours of my life searching around in settings, right? And search has been integrated over time where you've been able to go through and search through settings, but it still is a little bit frustrating. And it's in a little window sometimes, right? And so what we've done here is this is a full tab, and it's an entire nice modern experience for that. What's really cool is all your settings are persisted in JSON. These are JSON files. So this unlocks a lot of cool things. Number one, you can save your settings, you can export them, you can use them locally in a readable format. You can also check them into a repo. So you could save out your JSON settings can be persisted with your repo and shared amongst your team. And again, if you ever need to dig in and understand or do anything with versioning or whatever of your settings, it's all in a JSON format. So along with that is extensions. Now, extensions has always been one of my favorite features in Visual Studio, and it's also been a frustration when I'm moving between versions, because I'll fall in love with an extension that was in, say, 2019, and then I moved to 2022, and oh no, I'm waiting for the extension author to update that extension. Sometimes they never do, right? Or that sad face thing when you're going out and you're looking for an extension to work with some file type or do some special thing with Markdown or whatever, and you go and you find it and it was released for an older version and it's not available. So we've seen that that's just kind of a frustrating experience, and sometimes it's just you're waiting for someone to fork it and bump the version number. So what we did in this release is instead we built it so a few things work really well with your extensions. One is, by default, we assume that the extension is going to work in 2026. Number two is we made that actually work. So we looked at across the 4,000 top extensions, and they're all just loading, right? So this is a comment. I have not hit a single extension that did not work in 2026. Now this is, you're seeing in this picture here that it will kind of show you, hey, this one was released for 2022, and you can, at the enterprise level, you can set policies on this. So you can say, I will only allow these extensions that have been released only for 2026, et cetera. But by default, things just work. Another neat thing with that is when you install 2026, it includes bringing over your extensions as part of the install experience. So it's, welcome, do you want to bring along your extensions? And, at first I was being very careful with this. I've installed this many times, but now I'm just like, yeah, bring them on, and just bring over those extensions you're already experienced with. So this is something I'll mention again later at the end, hopefully, but the idea here is that we really designed 2026 around being kind of a, there's no blockers, there's no downside to installing it, to moving into it. So a few ways we did this, things like extensions just magically working for you, but also things like your projects will just work side by side and you don't have to worry about like, oh no, this is gonna break something. In the past, Visual Studio was sometimes tied to build tools, and we've decoupled that now. So now that engineering work has been done so that there is no dependency between the two. So what that means is you can go and you can confidently open, your source code's already in source control anyways, probably, right? So this shouldn't be like a worry, but sometimes it still is, like, am I gonna waste time with something working differently? And we've done that work so that they're going to work the same, all right? So I recommend, if you're some of those that raise your hands as the holdouts, that you can go ahead and install 2026 side by side and try it out. Try it for a few days, try it for a week and see. And you're not going to have to worry about things kind of breaking or changing side by side. All right? All right. One other neat thing that ties this all together is Copilot. So Copilot is just baked into 2026, and it can do a lot of great things for you. So dialing back a few slides here, we were talking about settings being saved in JSON. What's neat is Copilot understands that. So you can go in and you can say like, hey, look at my settings. I don't know, what's different between this project and this other one? Or you can say like, change my settings so that the font size is bigger when I'm editing JSON or something, right? So you can go in and you can work directly from Copilot with your settings. But across everything across your environment, you can say like, help me change my theme, or how can I optimize my project startup, that sort of thing. So Copilot is not just a one-off thing for help me with this exact function. It is deeply baked into Visual Studio. And remember, I also called out that Visual Studio knows your solution. It knows what you're working on. And so you can also say things like, looking at this, you can ask questions that are very much about your entire project or your context you're working in. All right, with that, I think I'm just going to go over it and pop into Visual Studio. Let's see if this pops up. Okay, so I intentionally started with this not running because I want to show you a few things. One, starting it up. Okay, that was fast, right? So that's the initial launch, and then we'll go in. I'm opening up MVC Music Store. And there we go. I had this open, but I mean, it's loaded. We saw earlier from MVPs, people, Steve Smith said he opened something with over 100 projects and was just shocked at how fast it opened. I'll set a little like tension or whatever. I'll talk about why some of that happened in a few, a little bit later in this talk. But so that's one thing that started up really, or the startup is quick. Here is, if I go into my theme, we can pick our different theme. There's, if we want to be a little wacky, we can go with bubblegum. You may want to kind of change them around depending how you're feeling that day. I've been going with there's ice mint or cool breeze. But I mean, these are just kind of built in, right? So there's a variety here. And we've also built the themability so that it is easier for building and shipping and customizing themes further, all right? So I'm going to go back to Cool Mint. It's got kind of a bit of a retro Visual Studio look for me, which is neat. So those are a few things. Of course, we've got we've got Copilot sitting right there. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's go in with our, I wanted to show settings. So let's go settings. Where's my brain right now? Tools, options. Right. So here's our modern settings experience. And I can go through and I can search things. I can say, you know, like JSON, I don't know, something like that, and search. So it's all right there. Now, some of these things were available that you could go in and you can configure things to get this experience earlier on. This is just the default now, right? So that's all cool. One other thing I want to show you here is MCP. So MCP, the way I like to think about it is it's the extension model for Copilot. It's the extension model for AI. So you've got your chat, and your chat is working with, in this case, I'm using Claude Sonnet 4.5, right? So Claude Sonnet 4.5 shipped earlier this year, and it's static. It's never going to learn anything new. So if we're going to do something with it, we need to give it some context. Now, some context that we use here is we're working in a project, so I can ask it things about my project, right? So that is a bit of context it has. But we can also, we can say like, go fetch a web page or go do something. It can retrieve information. But what's really cool is if you can teach it new tricks, if you can give it new tools, all right? So there are some tools that are built in by default. So let's go here. And if I click on this little tools thing, this shows ones that we ship with. So we've got Copilot. So Copilot, and we've got Microsoft Learn, and we've got NuGet. So those are, these are great for things like, hey, I want to say, well, let's say Microsoft Learn. I want to say, like, go get me information on a sample. So say I wanted to add a new feature to this project. I could say consult the docs and look at the samples and add a new, you know, browse page, right? Or look at the docs and make sure that I'm doing project startup correctly, that sort of thing, right? I can also use things like NuGet, and I can say like, hey, help me find if, here, let's do it. Let's say, are there vulnerabilities in my NuGet packages? So it's going to realize that it's got that tool. So first it's going to look, it's going to find, look around in my project. Now here it says running the Get NuGet solver. So this is a tool that the NuGet team built. And it is able to do, so it is not just like naive AI where it's going and making best guesses at things. It's actually able to say, hey, I can use the tool written by the engineers that work on NuGet all the time and help diagnose things. Here it's having trouble finding something, but that's okay. It can go and it can search around and it can find my packages. And so then it's able to say, now this is a very old program. It's very poorly written because I wrote it about 10 years ago. So here it's saying here, yeah, jQuery, you might want to move on from that, right? And so there's a few things. So it's able to go, and then it'll help me analyze and different things I can update. One other MCP-related thing I want to point out is that we've got a great MCP experience built right in. So if I go to extensions, and this is how I kind of remember how to find it. It's basically the extension model for AI, right? So if I go into extensions, I can say MCP. I can look, okay, there's tons of different ones because MCP is an industry standard. So I can go and I can say like, hey, Context 7 is awesome. The same way that we have, I mentioned the Microsoft Learn docs, that knows about Microsoft products. Well, Context 7 is it's a community project out there that is able to search across all, it's actually run by Upstash, and it can search across documentation for all kinds of stuff, right? So this is one that I always use all the time. There's Elasticsearch, there's all kinds of different ones. One neat one that I don't need to go and install is the Azure MCP, because that is now built in. So the Azure MCP is great for doing things like saying, hey, I don't know, what is my quota left on this thing? Or I don't know, I can ask things about, like I can say, look in my project, and then look at my Azure resources and compare. You know, I can say, like, help me diagnose this, or what's the status of billing on whatever, right? It's able to do all kinds of different things with that. So that is really cool. There's some good docs on that dig in further. So that's kind of a quick look, high level, at Visual Studio 2026. Back onto the slides. So one other neat thing, I showed you Copilot. I am a .NET developer. I have written production C++ code a long time ago. You definitely don't want me writing C++ code for you. However, if I was going to, I would be signing up for this private preview immediately. The C++ team has built C++ code editing tools for GitHub Copilot. So it has understanding of modern C++, best practices, all sorts of stuff. Shout out to the C++ team. I connected with them before this talk, and they gave me all kinds of great support on this. There's a lot of great stuff. So they are very motivated and hardworking, and just really cranking away on the Copilot experience for C++ in 2026. OK, so I mentioned before I was going to talk about the Profiler agent. So the Profiler agent is a great example of a few things coming together. We have had profiling built into Visual Studio for a while. Anyone here, show of hands, who here is really, really good at the Profiler in Visual Studio? Like, I mean, OK. Congrats, sir. I meet so few people that actually are good at this, and I am not good at this. I've like tried, and I'm clicking around, and I'm like, what is happening, right? It's a bit of a confusing experience. Because it's a very powerful tool, right? It's like putting me behind a forklift and saying, you know, go do something. I'm like crashing into stuff, right? So it's not really beginner friendly. It's a powerful tool. What's great is that Copilot understands your code and understands that profiler. And so it's able to work directly together with those. So here, let me actually jump back over to this. I'm going to go to my other. So I'm actually working in a dev box. Dev boxes are really fun because they are, it's basically a really fancy virtual machine. These are connected, like they have like 100 gigabit Ethernet. They're like super fast. They're like super powerful. So anyways, it's a great way to kind of juggle back and forth different things. So this is nlog. And what we've done in here is we've got a benchmark that goes and it just runs things multiple times using benchmark.net. So what I've done with that is I've run that. And let me see if I move over here. Nope, I don't have that installed. So over in here, we've got, go to that. So it goes and it runs the benchmarks, and it understands, OK, here's what's going on. And then it's able to say, hey, here are some optimization areas. Understanding that impact, because it's running the profiler, right? So it runs the benchmark, and then it profiles as it's running the benchmark. So it's doing two things at the same time. Run the benchmark to basically generate the load and to like see how fast things are running, right? And then it's running the profiler as it does that to understand what is running slowly in there. And after that, it says, here's a bunch of things you can do. So it gives me phases of things I can do. So I love whenever I'm doing this stuff to say like, execute phase 1, right? So it goes off and it does that. It locates something that is running slowly. And then in every step along the way, it says, like, here's what I recommend doing, right? So it's not just magically changing around your code, but it goes through. I say, find areas. OK, here, I actually ran it a few times. And after doing this, it cut something down by, let me see. This is a matter of a few minutes, and it did a 16% improvement, right? Now, I'm actually copying. This is from a demo that, whoops, here. Doing mega zoom. This is 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗶𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗏 did this. He actually went through as they were building this and worked with several of the top open source projects. So there's NLog, there's CSV helper, a bunch of other things that are very, very widely used. And he went through and actually created pull requests and worked with the developers of these things to get these merged. So it was a really great example of going ahead and being able to do that. I'm not sure if this will work because I disconnected the session. Let me see. What is the next perf optimization opportunity? We'll see if this works. I don't know because I disconnected the sessions in between. But this is a really great, and also, by the way, with this, it's able to work with, yeah, so, okay, this will further reduce things. Go for it. Right? So this is working because it looks like I'm just in GitHub Copilot chat, but I'm actually using the profiler agent. So the way that the profiler agent works is you say like @profiler and you start asking questions, and then you're working with a specialized agent that understands profiling and optimization, right? So this is a really cool example, and a fun thing with this, I mentioned that Nick was working with all these open source projects. Well, Nick and the team actually were using the profiling agent on the Visual Studio code itself. And so remember earlier where I was talking about how quickly things load and how optimized Visual Studio 2026 is? It's partly because we used our own profiling tools on our source code, right? So it's really kind of a cool cycle of just using our own product to make things get better. Also something where you can kind of trust it has been used a good amount because we've been using it internally quite a bit, right? So this is an example as it's going through and doing that. When it gets done, by the way, with that profiling, because I did things in a different order, you don't see this, but after running the profiling the first time, you get this cool report. And you can actually go through and dig through and you can say, hey, here's what was the specific issue, or why was it allocating, or what type of thing was being allocated, et cetera. So I'm giving you a few minutes on this. To go deeper on this, I recommend checking out this session at .NET Conf. So Nick goes deep into this, and it's really, really cool seeing this is not something to go through in 3 to 5 minutes, but it's really cool to see gone through in a half hour. So Nick does a great job at explaining how this all works. And a shout out too as well, this is one .NET Conf session I'm highlighting, but we had close to 100 sessions on everything in .NET. So definitely check out all our cool stuff from .NET Conf from last week as well. All right, done with the pictures, cool. All right, let me see now. Let's see if this plays correctly. This is from the C++ team, and they created a similar sort of video on C++ optimization. So let me see if this works.
In this demo, we will be using Jolt Physics, an open source physics library used by major AAA titles. With Visual Studio 2026 open, let's switch to GitHub Copilot Chat and select the agent @build_perf_cpp. Here, we can ask the agent to make my build faster. Copilot prompts us to start a build. Let's accept it so the agent can run the tool and capture the insights it needs. When the trace capture is complete, GitHub Copilot will analyze the data to highlight expensive header inclusions, long function generation bottlenecks, and costly template instantiations. In our case, because the agent is reading header files, we know that it has found several expensive header inclusions that are slowing down our build. With this knowledge, the agent begins optimizing and moves the identified headers into a precompiled header, or PCH, a common workflow to reduce expensive header inclusions. Next, the agent kicks off another build to verify the changes are compiled successfully. As you can see, there were some build errors, but the agent is addressing them without needing further input from me. The agent continues to iterate to address the error and complete a successful build. Finally, with the build successful, the new GitHub Copilot build performance capability summarizes the changes, highlights the hotspots that were fixed, and shows how much time you saved. In our case, we have saved 5,000 milliseconds, shaving off about 20% of the total build time. The summary not only lists expensive headers, but also suggests opportunities for further improvement.
Awesome. While that was running, by the way, this is the view after it completed that last optimization. This one was already quite optimized, so there's the top 5 categories is one category, but here it's showing that kind of cool view. So this is how it's running the profiler for me without me needing to know how to run that profiler. Cool. All right, so this again for C++ folks, based on like we just saw that video from David Lee. If you would like to try that out, you can. This is how you follow up on this. So the C++ build performance tool, doing those things that David just showed. Do we have many people here that are using C++ regularly, or at your? Okay, awesome, cool. So. All right, so the last thing we're going to be talking about is the enterprise-ready focus. So for this, I'm going to be showing a video of the modernization experience in Visual Studio 2026. So this is the MVC Music Store. This is actually that app that we saw me open previously. And this is a demo app that we used to teach ASP.NET MVC back with .NET Framework. So this is an ASP.NET, so this is .NET 4.8. And so this I'm going to kind of talk through this. The reason that I'm doing this is because of 2 reasons. One is because AI is a little bit non-deterministic and things are slightly different every time, and it's nice to just kind of have one thing to talk through. But the main reason is, real world, this takes about an hour. This is not something where you just kind of kick it off and it's done. And that makes sense, right? Because if you've updated .NET Framework apps to modern .NET, in this case .NET 10, it's not something that's going to be done in 3 minutes. It's going to take a little bit of time. So this is an app that has 2 databases. It has different dependencies, including front-end dependencies. It's got any framework. It's got all kinds of stuff going on. So I'm going to start this going, and I'm just going to talk through it and explain what's going on here. So this is an album app. You can go through and you can browse and buy albums. So first of all, it's running in .NET 4.8. So in order to modernize, you right-click on the project and you say Modernize. So this is just built in. What this does is it brings it up in the Copilot chat, but it's got the modernization agent. So it's not just a generic modernize thing or generic chat, right? So it goes through and it analyzes the project. It says, okay, let me figure out what we got here. It gives you options of what you want to update to. So it's going to recommend different things. We're going to upgrade to .NET 10. It also recommends using a branch. So because it's going to work in a Get branch, so you're going to not be working directly on your live code. You're going to be working in a separate branch. So it automatically creates that branch and switches over to it. And then it goes through, and the first step it's going to do is work towards a plan. So all of our kind of modernization or larger things work off this plan base. So it's going to create a plan that's in Markdown, and I can go through and edit this document. So what's great there is I can go through and I can say, number one, it's Markdown. I could share this out with the team. It's actual readable format. I can send it to my boss, et cetera. Maybe in an appendix. But I can also go through and I can change it, right? I can say, here's what I want to do with Entity Framework. I want to make specific changes here. I want to maybe, whatever it is, maybe hold off on this part of the update, or we always use this specific DI library or this sort of logging library, right? So this is where I can go through and make my customizations. In other words, this is not just a file that's being spit out saying, here's what we're doing. This is a collaborative document. I can also check this in, right? This is an artifact, and I can check it into my repo, because this may be a long-running thing. I may want to talk it over with my team. I may want to, kind of work on this upgrade over a period of time, right? So when I hit go, then it's going to go through and work through this checklist. I've got this cool dashboard that is going to show as it works down the list, right? And a lot of the time with these upgrades, some of it is build fix, right? It's build fix, build fix, build fix. And so we make updates based off of the plan, and then it builds and it says, okay, wait a minute, we've got to do this, we've got to make this change, we've got to accommodate breaking API changes, et cetera, right? So sometimes it's like it's going to show these things where you can click on the individual investigate buttons, or you can just say, go ahead, finish, go do it, So sometimes with the Copilot, you need to actually like kick it a bit and say, go finish it off. So it's doing all the back-end stuff with the build, but it's also doing the front-end stuff. So if you've done this sort of migration in the past, we have really dramatically changed things with like how we work with JavaScript and other front-end libraries, right? In the past, this came in via here's a great example. Here we have a problem with a connection string. Something changed with our database. So instead of like puzzling over it, we just copy the exception directly into the chat and say, fix it, right? I highly recommend when you're using Copilot to give it all of the context that you can. So don't just say, I got a bug. Give it the entire exception, give it the stack trace, let it know exactly what's going on. Okay, so let me see. Yeah, before I dig into that more, let me just go back to, okay, so close that out. So I hear some discussion. Anyone want to like shout out any questions or anything? We got a small group, so I'm happy to take like a live question or a live, no, okay. Cool. All right. So the general kind of flow here is just that. I'll just show you how I get started. This is that same thing where I started asking general questions, right? So I can just go in. I right-click. I hit Modernize. And so here we showed, in that video, we showed upgrading to a newer version of .NET. But you can also say, hey, I want to migrate this to Azure. I may want to migrate this to Azure without upgrading to .NET. .NET Framework 4.8 runs fine on Azure, and that's fine too, right? Or I may want to explore other modernization options. If I do that, it's going to say like, hey, you probably want to get off jQuery, or you want to update your, like some other kind of modernization things. If I go in here, I say upgrade to a newer version of .NET, so I click on that. Then you'll notice you may hit the same trap that I've done in the past. I hit the button and nothing happened. And that's because it's actually just copied that into the chat down at the bottom. And I actually need to say go. And at first that threw me off a bit, but what's great with that is it gives you an editable experience, right? So instead of saying upgrade to a newer version of .NET, I could have said upgrade to .NET 10. Or I could have told it exactly what I want to do. Because now, because I just hit go, now it's going to kind of ask me questions about it, right? So I'll say, okay, now I want to use, here it's saying .NET 8. Oh no, .NET 10 all the way, right? So anyways, and that's kind of neat with chat is we can, sometimes I like to encourage it too. I'll say like, I'm so proud of you and that kind of stuff. But anyhow, you can work your way through there. So that's the general experience, right? So that is what we've got there. Now, we also have, for C++, we've got a modernization experience there as well. So again, if you're interested in this, we've got a link there. This is a private preview you need to sign up for. It's a really short little forum, and you just describe what you're trying to do and contact info and stuff like that, and you can get signed up for that. So this is something like upgrading from framework to .NET 10, that's a little tricky. Upgrading like a complicated C++ project, I wouldn't even want to start with that, so I'm definitely in on this private preview. So it follows that same kind of workflow that we've talked through there. So it's first of all assess. What kind of project do we have? What version are we? What are we working with, right? Then after that, we come up with a plan. So this is that same sort of thing where we have a plan summary. We have, here's what we're expecting to do. So it's not I love this over the kind of general, just hack away in Copilot or whatever coding agent, right? Because it's a planned thing. It's not a go do some stuff and then you look at it later and it's written a bunch of horrible code and you're like, what is happening? You know, this is not good, right? So instead, we want to be able to agree on a plan. And again, maybe this is a plan that I share with my team. You know, we kind of figure out, okay, this is exactly what we want to do. Then after that, we actually do it, right? We execute this. So it's going to go through, and it's, you know, things may take several iterations. We have to work through it. And then at the end, we analyze it and make sure it all worked. OK, so kind of wrapping up. One other important thing to know about is Visual Studio is now shipping on a monthly update cycle. So this is great news for some people. Other people are like, I'm not sure about that, right? But I want to convince you, everybody, it's good news for everybody, OK? So for a few reasons. One is, you know, your browser is updating all the time, right? You don't worry about that. Even in your enterprise, your browsers automatically update. If you're using Visual Studio Code, that updates every month as well. Also, with Visual Studio, there are different channels. So there's a preview, or there's an insiders channel, which is the one that gets the features fastest. But if you want the stable channel, you're going to be getting features. It still ships every month, but it's a little more conservative. So it's going to ship you, you know, it's going to include things that are like security fixes or, like obvious things that need to go out. It's also going to be quicker to ship like large language model updates. Like so you get availability of the large language models. But for things that are like more, hey, this is a brand new feature, those are going to come to the insider channel first, and people like me are going to test it for you. And then when you on the stable channel get it, you've already, you know, like had a more tested experience. But I've been on insiders since, I don't know, summer, and I'm absolutely like loving I have not hit anything yet. Like, this is a personal anecdote, right? But I'm really loving the quality of how things are rolling out. So the team has made a lot of effort. If you look at it over time, they moved from like shipping like in multi-year basis to shipping quarterly to now shipping monthly. So the way to think about this is the features are available when you want them, and we're able to ship you the features when they're ready without having to say like, oops, we missed it this one, we got to wait another quarter, right? So, so that is kind of the general overall thing. This is important to kind of think through as you're going into, you know, like, okay, jumping into 2026. One other neat thing is that, of course, it does ship side by side. So you're able to, you know, still use 2022 if you're worried, or if you whatever need to for some reason. Again, everything is built so that there's no kind of like build tool related dependencies, so that you can jump into 2026 and not worry about it like all of a sudden breaking your build, right? So it's available. You can go to AKAMS VS 2026 GA, or you can, let me just jump over. I think I have my slides here. You can go, I think that will take you to the top two links. So we've got on the Visual Studio blog, we've got kind of our summary of this. It walks through it. Here's, again, more of the stuff about the like fast solution load time and the UI thread unblocking, et cetera. So there's good information in there. There's also, just in general, across Visual Studio blog, there's so much stuff. I was pulling my hair out if I had hair, trying to figure out, like, 45 minutes, there's so much cool stuff, right? But fortunately, we've been writing about it on the Visual Studio blog lately. So there's, like, for instance, that Azure MCP server, the upgrade experience, themes, auto model selection, et cetera. And there's like a high cadence of new things rolling out across the blog, right? So this is a great place to keep connected. And then one other, of course, place is just go into visualstudio.com. So if you didn't get the AKMS link or whatever, that's neat. But you can find the Visual Studio blog, and you can definitely go to visualstudio.com. You can grab that and download and see all the stuff that I've been talking about here. So we're at time. I'm happy to take questions. And jump on in. Enjoy Visual Studio 2026. And thanks for staying late with me.